football then can be quite, like, certainly when you're managing, quite a lonely place. Losing and taking stuff home in a general is hard. Football consumes you anyway. You've got managing up of chairmen who expect certain things or have opinions on players, but you're trying to think straight and you're trying to be on your game model, how you want to do things. Ultimately, there is an element of a little bit of noise and a little bit of pressure can make you certainly think a little bit differently.
Yes, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to another episode on the Coach Rafa's podcast. I'm joined by Ross McNeilly, and to put into perspective, you have the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and the National League. He has managed and coached at the National League level. He knows his stuff. How are you doing today?
I'm good. And you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining me. And let's just get straight into it. First question is, from your experience, what is the key to creating a strong team environment?
Yeah, so I mean, like from obviously managing to like leading academies and sort of overseeing academies, I think staff is probably super important.
Right.
Getting your staff right, getting your management team right, I think that's really, really important. Obviously that leads into like the culture, how you want to do things. I think how you treat people, certainly your staff, they're the ones who are going to drive it. Like they're the ones who are going to sort of live it. And I was quite sort of like when I was academy manager at Aldershot, which is what I did before I was in the National League. I was quite fortunate that I had some really good sort of like senior leaders in that team.
They make things easier.
Oh, so much easier. Like I think everyone will look back at my success. I obviously went ultimately to manage the first team at Aldershot, and we had a really good environment in the academy, which was which was very welcoming. We were kind, we understood other people, and not just our players, but sort of other teams, and we were super supportive to the sort of like the area around us. But like I think back to it, and I had really good staff, and I had James Edmonds and Rich Anderson who's still there, and Ross White who was there with me initially. All I've probably missed lots of people there, but all really, really good people who made it super easy. And I think in creating an environment you can get sort of, and I've been sort of I guess a bit of a victim of this, is where like you have your set of values and what you want to live by, but ultimately if you've got good people who live and breathe them and do it anyway, makes your life so much easier. Right. And sort of like taking that into the first team environment, I think you can get sidetracked a lot by management of players and making sure that culture's right. But again, I think a lot of it will come from your staff. That's my personal opinion from my experience. And like I said, we had a really good environment at Aldershot, and that was generally because I had really good people.
I see. And how does the staff and their attitude and mentality and how much they live to the culture that you want to set, how much does that translate onto the players? How much does that feed into the players?
Yeah, well, massive. I mean, they're going to spend most of the time with them, right? Your goalie coach, your if you're your assistant, your first team coach, they're predominantly the ones who are gonna in the first team environment, like again in the academy and YDP lead and PDP lead and FP lead. They're the ones who are going to spend most of the time with the players and the parents. So it massively feeds into it. I think like I'm probably sounding like I'm this great leader, and I'm a bit. I'm not. I mean, I make loads of mistakes and have done it obviously as recently even as Whitehawk. So like I think for me it's just creating a culture of where it's open, it's honest, people are going in the same direction, and as a leader, like you've got to have sort of like, what's the word, you almost like want to defend your people or oversee and support your people. So I think creating that environment, and I think then you'll find people will do a lot more or sort of give a lot more, which was certainly the case like in the academy at Aldershot. But like I said, I was blessed with having such good people. Like the under-16s lead was obviously Rich Anderson, and we had a lot of people who worked in the area who also like supported Aldershot and grew up supporting Aldershot. So that again, that worked really well. But yeah, it was we had a good environment there. We're quite fortunate, really.
Right. And you mentioned about making mistakes.
Yeah.
So from your perspective as that leader, obviously it's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah,
We're going to make that mistake. So how do you sort of go to the team and say, look, I'll put my hands up, or do you just not really mention it, but you mentally learn from it?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that moment where you've realised, today was just my fault?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like being like overseeing a larger amount of staff. Like, I mean, like vulnerability obviously is super important, isn't
Yeah.
it? But then again, like you I think back to my time when I've made mistakes, whether it's making decisions for the people, or whether it's reacting sort of quite, I guess, negatively or directly in
that moment.
In that moment, yeah, like being quite emotional. So I'm sure like people still do make those mistakes. But yeah, I think like in terms of managing people and supporting people and helping people is something I believe in, but getting it right all of the time and being that super supportive person is hard to do all of the time. Certainly when like, I mean, at Aldershot Academy, I wasn't under pressure in the sense of like the pressure at Aldershot first team was very, very different. So
compared to the academy,
huge different pressure, like external fans, board, directors, players, all wanting to go in a certain direction. So then making those decisions as a leader becomes a little bit harder when you've got a little bit more of an external pressure on you. Whereas in the academy, I guess youth development and understanding of there's an element of making sure we get X amount on the pitch, or we have a squads and filled and stuff, but it's not the same pressure.
Right. So do you feel that pressure, that external pressure, can affect? Let's talk generally. Can affect a football coach, and to what extent they can really express themselves with their team if they have an external pressure?
100%. Like I think like dealing with other people, noise, you might call it, is hard.
Yeah.
And not just noise from like you probably immediately think of like social media, but you've got managing up of like chairmen who expect certain things or have opinions on players.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're playing them, for example.
Yeah. That is like, of course, going to be a thing. I think if anybody thinks that chairmen and directors and people above and managers and CEOs don't have opinions on teams, then
with football's a game of.
Oh yeah. I have conversations with my mum and dad about it. Like it's my job, but my mum's like telling me what to do, which is fine, obviously. And then I think that adds a real element of like noise, and it's quite difficult. Not difficult, probably not the right word, but you're trying to think straight and you're trying to be on your game model and your sort of like how you want to do things. And I think like certainly in my time at Aldershot and even potentially Dorking, like there's an element of ultimately less risk or be less risk averse or maybe taking your foot off the gas. I don't know how you want to call it, but yeah, there is an element of a little bit of noise and a little bit of pressure can make you certainly think a little bit differently.
Right.
And how these top managers, like Pep, for example,
losing last night.
How they're able to apply an element of like I guess objectivity to it and calmness to it under that much pressure is mad. But I guess the noise is the same, really, right? Isn't it? It's the same chairman. Like obviously he's got thousands and thousands of more comments on Twitter, but I can't imagine he looks at it. So like it's still the same thing. So yeah, the and then you talk about like players have opinions, like staff have opinions. So when things aren't going well, that there is lots of opinion, but football then can be quite like, certainly when you're managing, quite a lonely place of like trying to figure out,
especially when things aren't going well.
Yeah, 100%. Which at times at Aldershot it wasn't going well, and at times it was going really well. So yeah, it's just I guess honing out the right and wrong things and also sticking to your values. I mean, I work with Mark White, and I think probably one of the best things I learned from Mark, and coming away and being able to reflect on it, he is very good at that. He sticks to his values and his principles and his style, and getting him to change or him even wanting to change is pretty commendable, to be fair, and he'll always do it the way he wants to do it. So seeing someone like that do it like that is quite impressive, to be fair.
Right, and you've mentioned the chairman and the director side of things. So how important is that relationship between the manager and the chairman and director? Would you potentially sacrifice a better opportunity knowing that the relationship may not be as good as potentially like a lower league opportunity where you know that, okay, this relationship here, like I know this, I've known this person for 5-10 years, they see football the way I do, so I'm going to take this opportunity, which, yeah, the level isn't as high as the other one, but it's my peace of mind that counts. How do you approach that type of situation?
So how would I approach it? I would now, based on my experiences, make sure that is vital to me. That I think having that relationship, having that trust, having the same, being on the same page, I think is super important. Managing up, certainly in football. I mean, probably in any business, but from my experience in football is key.
Yeah,
that ability to have those relationships with people above you and be open, be honest, be transparent, both sides. I think that will if first team management is something I do or go back into or whatever that looks like, that will have a big factor on my decision. I think like I said, we touched on it earlier, it can be lonely and you need a lot of support and the strategy, which a lot of football clubs unbelievably don't have it, but I think strategy, just mad, isn't it? But I think like the strategy is super important, and like I said, being on the same page and having the sort of like same ideas, not totally the same ideas, but if I'm going to come in and I want to win the league, but his objective is to develop young players and play a certain style of football, which might not be my style of football, I think can have a huge bearing on how that job's going to go, really. So I think it's really, really important. But on the other side of that, like I'm not managing at the minute, and if a club in the National League come in, and then it throws up a whole different thing, doesn't it? People want to get managed, and people want that opportunity. So,
but at what cost, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
you don't want to be receiving phone calls after a 3-0 loss. What's going on when the obvious problem could be it's just the players in that moment.
Yeah.
It's spot on. And just linked with that, if you look at a team's success, how much do you think in terms of percentages it's down to the coach, the manager and the coaching staff, and then the actual players themselves?
Yeah.
What's the percentage, do you think?
All percentages well are there. I do think it's a lot of player led. I do think it's player led. I think it's more than people think. I think a good team can be sort of like, I'm going to probably even go like 90-80% here.
Really?
Players, yeah, I do, yeah.
Right.
I think a good group of players can be ruined by a bad manager, and I think a good group of players will generally do all right. But a manager can maybe make them a little bit better.
Right.
I just think from my experience, having like good people in the dressing room, good players doing good things, I think real clarity of roles and tactics, simplicity of roles and tactics,
and a bit of know-how or common sense as well in certain moments, which I struggle to coach at times, because it's like in that moment you either have that decision or you don't.
Yeah.
For example, balls bouncing back. Do you do a back pass to your goalkeeper in the 90th minute, or do you just clear it to win the game?
Yeah.
But those things, as you mentioned, yes, definitely.
I do bits for some 16 to 19s at the minute, and a real problem with them is those types of things. Like we're sort of like fixated on game models at the minute, which I think game models are great.
Yeah.
Like I think they're really holistic. I think they cater to different teams and different people's needs. I think different game models for different clubs is a really positive thing. But we get so fixated on it, we forget the fundamentals of football. Just like when to play over, what is playing out from the back, when to play out from the back, when to press, when not to press, all sort of like get lost. And you have these kids who like come to me at 16 who are just like flat out game model, and you're like, well, actually
they're more academic than
robotic, aren't they? They become robotic to this game model, but that's not youth development. Youth development is teaching kids what football is, and like we talked about, like what is playing out from the back, when to play over, when to play through, when to play short, when to press, when not to press, when to get into a block. All these things are like the fundamentals of football, I would call them. Well, that's the right thing to call them, but I think they've got lost a little bit in the sort of like recent years with the sort of like evolve. Would I say how it's evolved? or like the glamorous to have a game model, isn't it?
Yeah, to have your principles of play.
Yeah, but then like they're yours.
Yeah.
They're not what is needed. So they're yours, and that kid might end up in someone else's game model. Or, well, will end up in someone else's game model. So
Stuck with the previous one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then straight away, you haven't give them an overall encompassing view of what football is or what it needs to be. Like you just like pressing back and not playing over. Like kids can't play over or can't clear it nowadays because everything is 6, 7, 8 yards.
Yeah.
So you get them at 16, 17, you're talking about playing over, and like, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So I find that quite a new thing or a funny thing about sort of like youth development at the minute. This is what it is, isn't it?
So how would you coach adaptability then? Because it sounds like youth development is all about being adaptable. So then when they leave one game model and go into another team, they have to adapt. They have to play in different formations. One position doesn't mean the roles of one position isn't the same in every formation, depending on the manager. So how important for you is adaptability and decision making as well?
Yeah, I mean, they're fundamentally the two most important things. Like decision making and like football is so mental, isn't it? And so like it's psychological, isn't it? So, but like youth development, and this is where first team differ, is obviously when I'm Aldershot manager, I've got a way of playing. So then I'm selecting players based on my style. So I want to play like this. So we go and sign players like Tyler Frost. We have Ryan Glover. We want Jack Boreham, players that we know would fit what we were trying to do. We wanted to be high energy. We wanted to be able to press. We wanted to be able to work hard and recover. And we wanted like technical players who could suit that as well. So that's what we profiled. But like then you're going and finding those players. Whereas like youth development is not that, is it? It's like you said, it's creating players for the bigger picture, which is we don't know what game model they're going to play in.
Yeah,
we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know what system they're going to play. I'm a big Bielsa fan. He's my favourite, and I wish he still worked in England. And he says something about like I think he was asked about formations for youth development, and he just says the best thing they can do is play them all.
Yeah,
the best thing you can do is play them all. Like
they just fit into everywhere.
Correct, yeah. Like, and he says if it was up to me and he was overseeing the academy, I would change formation every 3 months in the academies.
Right,
and I find that I find that really interesting. And he is right, because you just don't know what they're going to do or where they're going to be or what they're going to look like, really.
Exactly, and linked to the formation changing and being adaptable. Let's say, you're in a National League game and you're chasing a game. You're 1-0 or 2-0 down. There are managers that will always stick to that one system, that one style of play, and trust that will find a result. Or they'll switch. Which one are you more focused on in that aspect? Yeah,
so again, probably links into me liking Bielsa, and I like Iriola at the minute and stuff like that. So like I always like to try and get like a +1 on the back line if I can. Okay. I think we became a bit heavy on it when I was at Aldershot, and almost like a bit detrimental to the players a little bit, because they'd never really done it before. So if someone's in a 3-5-2, I mean, most likely I'll move into a 3-5-2, which we did against Wrexham to good effect. We went 3-1 down. We played a 4-3-3. And it was like literally flat out game end to end, and we went 3-1 down in about 15-20 minutes and changed to 3-5-2 and really got at and put them under pressure, got back to 3-3, and they scored in the last minute. I know, gutted. Good players doing good things, and that's what it was. Elliot Lee on the corner. I think Dolby scored a near post header. So I'll always try and get a +1 on the back line, and then try and jump players if I need to press in our final third or defensive third. But that's sort of my principles, and maybe a detriment to sort of I guess some players in the fact that they've never done it before. But we did it loads when I was 21s at Aldershot, moving formations to try and get a +1, and moving systems to try and get more closer to their mark, which Bielsa's a big believer of. So which I'm a massive advocate of. Like you watch Hannah at the minute, like he's a perfect example of I'm gonna play this sort of like 5 sort of 2-3 or whatever he calls it.
And the players clearly
Yeah, and they can't get close to players, so they end up low. And you want them
Just
to,
gives them time.
yeah, it does. Yeah, you want to get close to people to
Yeah.
affect them and make them make decisions or make them have to play forward about whatever that looks
Yeah.
like. But I find it really frustrating watching it. And then you watch people like Tuchel who are really good at getting +1s, and I guess Bielsa's obviously, we mentioned. Pochettino is again similar to that. I mean, Pep loves having +1 on the back line as well.
Yeah,
And
with the goalkeeper.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
So now that's almost like you could say +2 even.
Yeah.
If the keeper's really good with their feet.
Yeah. It's mad, and like how the game has evolved. But then on the other side of that, you look at like teams like Bournemouth and Fulham, who have now gone to like, all right, we'll go man to man and we'll turn this ball over as high as we can, and we'll get at you. Yeah. So there is elements of it sort of like evolving even more. Like you watch Real Madrid and Man City.
Yeah.
It's like Man City's worst night. They just don't have the players to cope with the transition or to cope with the physicality of the game. Again, which is how it's evolved a little bit.
Yeah. So how important is it to master transitions and be sharp, whether you win the ball or when you lose the ball? How can a coach that within a team?
Yeah, with great difficulty. I do think that transition is one of the most, if not the most important phases of the game.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
and I find it very difficult to actually coach because it's so instinctive at times. It's just down to the player. When they win the ball, you either play back, or if you can go forward, or you play side. Like in that moment, what does the player think? And I find that personally very hard.
Decision making, isn't it? Yeah. So I tend to, like, a couple of things I use. So like I think attacking transition. So obviously when you win the ball, I tend to, certainly if I'm in my own half, I'll get the players to find 2 or 3 passes.
Okay.
So I think and then you connect quick, and can we then get control? If we're sort of in their final third or our final third or their defensive third, I'd be like, can you go and score?
Yeah.
So there's a clear line between what it looks like. Again, you watch teams like Man City, like they'll have such good decision makers in that they'll know exactly in the final third. Sometimes they'll just go and connect and find 2 or 3 passes. And then like in similar out when defensive transition, there's like you've got your rest defense, haven't you? Which is important. Work coaching recovery runs, I think, is important.
Yeah.
But also then like can you win the ball back in a certain amount? Don't let them connect. So like stop them getting 2 or 3 passes.
Because in that moment you can actually win it back.
Yeah, affect it. Yeah. Or is it a case of, okay, we can't do that, or maybe we're not in the final third? Can we then go and get our shape, and then what does our shape look like, and then start pressing from a shape? I think data is mad now, isn't it? Like the amount of data there exists, and the way, I think if you can measure things, so like how many percentages did you find connect in your own half, and how many times did you attack and get a shot at goal in the final third, and if you can measure those types of things, I think that'll help a lot. I think sometimes we measure the wrong things. So like if you want to measure that type of stuff, but then we're getting towards game model data and measuring game model, and again you want to be wary of all that stuff, I guess, as well. So again, it's just fine line, isn't it?
Yes, and when it comes to player recruitment, do you think with the way football is evolving, that you just mentioned data, it's all about, okay, how fast are they? How athletic are they? Let's see their recovery runs. How many sprints are they doing? So then, now that the game is becoming a bit more end-to-end slowly, we are set in transition.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I always talk about this, like how different footballers are now to what they were 20 years ago. It feels like a real different type of player, isn't it? Like I grew up with like Ronaldinho and like Gaza and that type of era, like Rivaldo and like
pure footballers.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? They don't really exist anymore, do they? And I don't know whether that's me being like, I was thinking about this the other day actually, and I was thinking like, because my dad will tell me like, oh, but they weren't as good as the players in the 70s and 80s, and I wonder whether that's just because I'm getting older. Like I'm becoming a bit more miserable and a bit more like, well, actually, football it wasn't as good as in the 90s and early 2000s as it was now. So like, I wonder whether I'm getting a bit like what my dad is like in terms of the 70s and 80s, but it just doesn't fit. It feels different. And I think like, I don't think we're far away from, I mean, we're so data driven now. I probably don't think we're far away from at the top level it being like AI generated and I don't think
okay.
I don't think I don't know what that would look like, and I know Brighton are doing something similar to it, aren't they?
Brighton are very well known for their data, especially with young players.
Yeah,
they always find the right players.
mad, isn't it?
Sell them for crazy.
So like we're critical of it, but then they seem to do all right with it, don't they? And then you look at clubs like I guess at the top like United who don't. But I think in my time managing, and that is hard to get all that data. You got things like Y Scout, which is super helpful. And you have analysis who can put sort of packs and profiles together for you. So certainly at National League, it wasn't something we couldn't do at all. But there was still a real element of I guess subjectivity and looking at the player and having...
It's the eye test, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think slowly, which I don't want really, and for the future of football, that the eye test becomes irrelevant? And it's just like, okay, this player looks good, but he doesn't have these stats, so we're not interested in him.
Yeah, I mean that would be sad, wouldn't it? I would also say as well, it's how hard is it to know what a player's going to be like in your environment? You get players
with your coaching, with
these people, with this squad, with this sort of like in this area. Like that's why like a lot of people like clubs don't fit certain players, and I think the players it's so hard to know their character or them as a person and what they're going to be like, and probably that in itself is one of, if not the biggest factor in getting a player. I mean, otherwise then every transfer would work, wouldn't it? Like look at Anthony at the minute. Like he's
suddenly a new player. Yeah,
it's crazy, isn't it? And everyone's like, oh well, he's in Spain, he's doing Spain, but there's loads of players who have been in England and done well and gone to Spain and struggled. Like I guess Coutinho did that. Yeah, really found it hard. So I think like you just don't know. You just don't know. So I guess the more data, the more stuff you have, the more info you have, almost like a dossier on players is the better. But as your resources drop, National League and stuff, it makes it really, really difficult.
Exactly.
A lot of managers come with like as well at that level, come with their own players and players they trust and players they work with.
Might as well stay with one.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They really, really do. And I guess the lower you go, like step 3, step 2, step 4, that becomes even more so. Really.
Yeah.
Managers jump with full squads. Really, certainly over in this country.
Yeah, and linked with the sort of player mentality. When it comes to a player expressing themselves at the National League, at the higher levels of football, how important is it that they are mentally relaxed or secure in that environment, and then linking that to their ability? So you could have a player who's got Lionel Messi's ability, but mentally they're not secure, they're not comfortable. So how much is it down to the coach to really find a way to get the best out of that player? Is it more one-to-one personal time? Is it asking them personal questions? What is it?
Yeah, well, I guess that goes into like just being a good person, doesn't it? And being human, again, just living it every day. Of like you should obviously have regular chats and regular meetings, and sure you're going to sit at the dinner, the breakfast table and the full time in particular, like the lunch table together, and have those sort of like connections and those relationships. And your staff, like I said, are going to have those connections and those relationships. But yeah, feeling comfortable in an environment, like anything, like going to work and your boss saying good morning to you, and things being about common sense and being about the person, like anything in football is important. But then you have those environments that aren't that, and teams do well. So like, how does that work, and how does that exist? But I guess then there's no long-term strategy, isn't it? And that's the problem, isn't it? Where you look at teams like Brighton, I've never been to Brighton, but I'd assume they've got a really good culture.
Yeah,
because every time there's a new manager comes in, it tends to just continue on, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then the results they're never like struggling.
Yeah. So then then United is the flip side of that.
Yeah.
So I think like having a good culture, having a good environment, having a good workplace, all leads into sort of like people being happy and people enjoying their time there. And if you got happy players, they're obviously gonna going to do better. But all players are different as well, by the way.
Yeah, some players perhaps they play better on anger.
Yeah,
frustrated.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And some players like some teams do well under like are resilient and do well under different pressures, and there is like one of the under adversity. But what do we know? We do know that if you want consistency and you want a long-term vision, a long-term plan, like in any business, like you need a good culture and you need a good, happy work environment. And yeah, of course, there's going to be exceptions to the rule of.
Yeah,
Of course there is. Like teams are doing well, or yeah, he's doing well, but the manager doesn't speak to any of us, or he doesn't know his tactics and whatever. But how long is that going to last, and what is going to happen when he moves and whatnot? And that again, that probably links into it being player led. But they're all just minority. The majority need, if you want to do well, need a good workplace.
That is interesting. I never thought about it like that. Where would you say then in that case it's down to the director and chairman to make sure to know that, look, when this manager leaves, he's not talking to our players, but we're winning.
Yeah.
This manager might leave. Yeah. Then what? We're
yeah. With directors of football, isn't it? And getting that right, and having CEOs and having like almost like succession planning. Like again, succession planning, it just doesn't really exist in football.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It makes sense,
but it exists in every other business. Like, what does it look like when this CEO leaves? What does it look like when he moves on? What's the handover look like? That all exists in companies. And then in football is very different. And again, probably, I mean, I'm not a Man United fan, but it sounds like I'm going on about United. But Anna Rim is a really good example of.
Yeah, there's
literally
been nothing.
There's nothing. There's nobody's thought about the money or the turnover that is going to be involved to develop that. And I'm not saying he's not going to be a success, but it's going to cost a lot of money for him to be a success. And surely that should have been part of the thought process. Every team in the Premier League plays 4-3-3. That's another thing. Like every team does, and except now him, and then like so. Then succession. What are they going to do? Are they going to build a team for 3-4-3? Maybe get some success, or maybe not get some success, and then are they going to recruit another 3-4-3 manager, which is going to be hard to find because they don't really exist.
You see that planning, I'm pretty sure hasn't been done.
Can't have been done. Yeah, it can't have been done. So then that's Man United. Like we're not doing that. So yeah, I just find there's a lot of emotion in football, isn't there? And there's a lot of like a lack of people who run businesses who don't run football then like their business.
Just because it's the sport that we all perhaps love and enjoy.
Yeah. Like I think Bielsa should still be at Leeds. I mean, but I'm biased. Like just keep him. Like I mean, they're going to get relegated anyway. It's like, it would have come straight back up. So yeah, but I think I find it quite odd in that respect. But I think it is super important, like having consistency and clarity and structure and strategy, certainly above.
Right. Yeah. And from your experience as a football manager, if you could put them into order, tactics, man management, and player ability, which order would you put them in and why, in terms of importance?
So, I mean, we've talked about player ability being like important.
Yeah.
I think man management and being a good person is important. Tactics is the most fun bit though, isn't it? For us. I mean, probably 80% of a team is the person, I think, or is the player, and is a good man manager. So I see would have that quite high. Okay. I think levels are different as well. Like I think the higher you go, there's certainly like it's like a game. I think it's a different sport in the Premier League to National League. I think it's like a game of chess.
Yeah,
the National and up there in the Premier League. Sorry, so like tactics probably come more prevalent there than certainly the more you drop.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they aren't prevalent. I'm not saying people aren't tactical, but then I do think like the sort of people who do really well, are good man managers, good people, have good players. I think that certainly, I would say, makes up 80% of it.
Right.
Maybe even more so in the lower you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where perhaps the playability isn't as high.
Yeah.
But it's the man management that gets the
correct.
Best.
Yeah.
Even if it's that 1% extra, it will make the difference.
Yeah. People who can recruit well. Certainly like step 2, step 3. People who know the area. People who can work with those types of players. And then of course there's an element of tactics because like clarity and simplicity and clear roles and clear objectives are all going to lead into having a good team unity and also like players being on the same page. So
Yeah.
I think again, it depends what your class as tactics. Like you immediately think of tactics as like
On the whiteboard.
yeah, on the whiteboard. Like, but if it's something as simple as like having a clear structure, being on like no ambiguity.
Or even it could be just, boys, team, let's just be on the front foot.
Yeah,
Whether that's with the ball, without the ball, we control the game.
Yeah,
as you said,
not talking over players' head, not overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
Which I probably have done in the past. I've definitely done in the past.
Right.
But I enjoy the purity of football. Like I love my background is working full time, and I love coaching, and
Yeah.
I love working with players on the grass, and I love seeing other people work with players on the grass, and seeing them go from A to sort of like B and C. So I think like that's what I love most, and I obviously like working with people, but I think like I'm not sure I've answered your question at all. But
No, you have. It's good.
but there's a real like sort of like I think you'll ask loads of different people, and I think you'll get real different answers. And
Yeah.
I'm sure if you asked like a Premier League manager, they'd probably say it's a very player. Like Pep's always going on about how it's the players, isn't he? Have you seen it when you asked in interviews?
Yeah,
He'll go
yeah.
like, "Oh, like you've won the treble or whatever." He goes, "Yeah, it's the players."
Yeah.
He'll go to the players, and he is bang on, which then again leads into like maybe getting your recruitment right and making sure you've got the right people on board.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's the toughest moment you've experienced as a manager, and what have you learnt from it?
Yeah. What's the toughest moment? I can think of like probably two. Like leaving Aldershot was tough, was a challenge. Like obviously I was interim manager there for 30 games I think we did in the National League.
Wow.
Obviously taking over like in October. I think leaving that and not having the opportunity to stay on was tough. I think everyone would probably say like that first sort of almost like I guess sacking or being asked to leave is always the hardest.
Okay.
So I found that I'd been there such a long time. I felt we'd built a good young side, and there was like real growth there for that team. They went and did really well the year after, which is obviously great as well to see. So, yeah, I think that was a challenge, and I think like of a football perspective, we lost to Dorking in the derby over Christmas period.
Right.
So that was really tough, and the toughest thing about that was
I see why.
yeah, the toughest thing about it was family and stuff. Like again, that's something that doesn't get talked about. Like dealing with how you are at home has such an impact on everything, and sort of learning to deal with like losing and losing such a sort of like local derby.
Yeah.
On I think it was New Year's Day. We lost on Boxing Day 2-1 at home, but we actually played really well, and we didn't deserve to lose. So it was disappointing. It didn't really hit me. And then we got beat 4-1 at their place on New Year's Day, and we for 50 minutes we were all right. It was close, and then we just sort of like threw the towel in for 10-15 minutes and got beat 4-1. And just like taking that home, sulking, the constant how am I going to fix it and what we're going to do moving forward was really, really tough.
Consumes your day.
Just consumes everything.
Yeah.
Everything. So I must have been like quite tough to be around at times, like around that. We went on a 10-game unbeaten one after that though. There you go. Yeah, maybe. But I think losing and taking stuff home in a general is hard. Football consumes you anyway.
Yeah.
But when like it affects other people, like players and the fan base. Fans are super important,
and your family members.
Yeah, you're gonna. It then seeps into that. So I think certainly having done Dorking, I'll certainly be better for those two experiences in whatever I do, sort of moving forward, really.
And what are those things that perhaps you try and take in to your next opportunity? So, you know, you've just suffered another heavy defeat where, yeah, it's a big game. You've suffered it. What would you do differently now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question.
Or is there anything specific, or is it more just general? You're more aware.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, all right, football is here,
Yeah.
house is here. Like,
Yeah, it's highs and lows, isn't it? I guess. And I think like I wish I did enjoy the highs a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, I do a little bit. Like um uh they don't come round like lots and lots and lots. So just enjoying those, I think, in particular. But I think like just being like on the level really, which is sounds a bit like a bit different to what I've just said, but I mean like understanding that it's a long game, it's football. There is a bigger picture, like you're aiming to get somewhere. I think like I look at my time at Aldershot and Dorking, like we never went we were never in the relegation zone like when I was there, and I had good positive relationships when I was there. I think the players were still playing and still enjoying it when I was there. So and Aldershot had a great season last year. Dorking are doing really well this year, so they're both like done really well after I've left. So I think in that there's lots of positives. But if I was to go on again, I think you've got to like, what's the word? You've got to try and still be like good with your staff.
Yeah,
I think that's a big thing. Like, don't let it affect them. You're there to protect them and be better for them. So you got to make sure that they're always all right. And I think also like sticking to my principles and it's hard to like. I think a lot of I go and watch loads of non-league, and I try and watch as much academy sort of under 21, under 18 as I can as well. Hopefully going to go to a few over the next sort of 5 or 7 days. So like, I think you watch some national non-league teams, National League South in particular, a lot of like blockers and being negative and just trying to get through games. And then I watch teams like who are actually trying to be like positive and make things happen, and maybe always try and be in that box really. I think that's a good place to be. And I've got some like Dorking and Hampton and Richmond. I've got some friends there at the minute, and they are that box. Always like thinking about 90% us and trying to be proactive and
finding solutions.
Yeah, being proactive. That's a good is the best place to be rather than being reactive. And I think like I watch these teams, and you're like, I'm not saying that they don't have a philosophy or any principles, but it looks like they're just sort of like coming to stop and block and react.
Hanging in there, sort of.
Yeah, and I think like there's elements of maybe I have done that in the past, and I just would probably not want to do that. I'm trying to be more in a case of being proactive if I can, and it's easy said than done, though, isn't it? Yeah, it's easy said than done, though, isn't it? When you're under pressure and you got to try and get results and trying to stay calm. But I think like going into management or any sort of football, sort of like step one or professional level is the sack will always be looming. So understanding that, I think sort of should help your mindset really.
Just knowing that it's a possibility.
Well, but it's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah,
everyone gets sacked.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, everyone does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like I think like even like Jose Mourinho, Bielsa gets sacked, and I mean the only one.
It's part of football.
It is part of football. Certainly at that in management, you are going to get. That is going to happen. Maybe more security in academies, but even the under 18s and 21s jobs chop and change and make big moves a lot. So I just think it's enjoying it while you're in there and being the best version of yourself. I think a lot of people like. I mean, my next job. Hopefully, I want it to be coaching and on the grass, and I want it to be working probably in the under 18s or 21s to go and learn in a professional environment. I think is where I know I can make it have an impact. I think being a bit different, being proactive, will certainly being at the back of my mind.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and last question would be: if there's a young aspiring coach watching this video right now, what would be your 1 or 2 key pieces of advice?
Yeah, good question. Build your profile and network.
Right. Something
I've probably learned more over the last sort of like 6 or 8 months. Just constantly, if you can get, I think stuff you do on Instagram is great, and you get your tactics board out and you do things for different levels and different people. I think if that's what you do and what you're good at, and it might be very, very different. And I've seen lots of different people, whether it's mentoring, supporting coaches or supporting players. I think build a profile, build a brand, network, get out and watch, get out and observe, get out and meet people. That would be the best advice I could give you. I think second thing would be authentic, like be you. I think like in a world where everyone is striving to do something and everyone's so similar, coaching is so similar. Just go and be authentic, be different, and don't be scared to sort of like do that and make mistakes and learn. That would be sort of like my biggest thing. Oh, by the way, I'm not the best at either of those things. I've probably I'm learning myself.
We're all figuring it out.
Yeah, 100%. But like the more you can do those two things, I think certainly like building your profile and networking. I think you'll make connections. These jobs that people want to get into, National League South, Academy 21s, 18s, they're already decided before you see the advert, and they're already decided if there even is an advert. So like they're through people they know, because you've built relationships already with staff and people. So I would get out and do as much as you can, and network as much as you can, and be authentic.
Right. And that's it right there. I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. I learned a lot myself, and I hope that you've gained the same value as I have done. You're going to see many clips of this posted on my social media platforms if you're watching this on YouTube. And yeah, that's it. Is there any final message you have to the camera directly?
Not really. Just obviously thank you for having me on. Like, it's good to come out, speak to you. Nice to meet you and stuff. And obviously wish anyone watching all the best on their coaching journeys. Everyone's journey is massively different. So yeah, like, enjoy it. And yeah, like I said, thank you for having me on, mate.
No worries. Until next time, peace. Cool. I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
For having us.